Welcome to Spotlight on Guilford. I'm Terry Kane. Most of us know a little of the history of our town, especially about the beautiful and beloved town green. But how much do you know about the other half of our town, that is North Guilford? I will bet not a whole lot. The recently published book, Voices from North Guilford, shines a bright spotlight on the history of North Guilford through engaging stories and a rich offering of old photographs. It's really well researched and is really well presented. The project to gather and publish this little known history of North Guilford took 8 years to complete, from beginning to this book. And I'd like to introduce you to 3 of the people who were involved in producing this history. So we have Buster Scranton in the studio today with us. And Buster was born and raised in North Guilford. He is president of the Dudley Foundation, and he's involved in the fire department. And it is Buster who innocently dreamed up this whole project. So welcome, Buster.
Thank you.
And then Linda Curry. Linda was born in, as she says, South Guilford, and has lived for 72 years in this town. She's involved in St. George's Church and hospice and the Dudley Farm. Louise Anderson, welcome to you. She is a native of North Guilford as well, 82 years in North Guilford. She's active at St. John's Episcopal Church in North Guilford. She is active in the Ladies Auxiliary North Guilford Fire Company, and also is corresponding secretary of the Dudley Foundation. So we're here together today to talk about the book and some of the history, how it came into being, what you had to go through to produce such a beautiful book, and how you got the idea. So what did prompt you to undertake such a huge project?
It started with a trip to a warehouse club to do some shopping one evening, and I was looking through their book selection, and I saw a book on North Brantford. My mother's family is from North Brantford, so it was of interest to me, and I bought the book. It was a fairly simple book, 2 pictures per page, a caption for each picture, not a whole lot of text to it. And I thought, this is something we could do for North Guilford. There really wasn't a lot written about North Guilford, so it looked like a good project for the Dudley Farm, and that's where it started. We didn't know that it was going to snowball in a good way, right. And it took off from there. I presented it to the board of the Dudley Foundation, and they were receptive, and we got off on the wrong foot. But then we consulted with a few people. For example, Joel Helander. He really led us in a different direction, and we're glad ever since that he did that.
Right. So what started out, which was potentially a small paperback kind of pamphlet, has turned into a hardcover, pretty long book.
Yes, and we used good quality materials in it. Right. It won't fall apart in 5 years.
Yeah, well bound, and really interesting pictures. I'm just fascinated at how you were able to dig back into this history, and is that why it took you 8 years? How did you find the people to interview?
Well, we put out a call to everyone, especially our members, that we're going to have an intake day, which we had well planned, we thought. We had sheets for people to fill out as to what kind of pictures they were giving us and permission to publish them. And that was fun, and we got a lot of information then for the pictures. And not too many for the stories at that point. But then, because the museum is open so often, people were dropping pictures off. They were thinking, oh, this is a good one. So you'd come into the farmhouse, the museum, and there'd be pictures all over the dining room table, not knowing who to give credit to for them. So we thought, oh my goodness, we're collecting a lot of things. So the pictures came in very fast, and not all of them have been identified. As actually this one. Can I show this one right away?
Sure. Let's show this picture here. I'll put this one down, and maybe we can get a look at this.
We call that the 4th of July house because we don't know where it is, but it's obviously decked out for the 4th of July. We are receptive to anybody who has any information on it, and it does appear in the book. It just illustrates that sometimes things came at us without the necessary information we needed to make the story complete.
Do you know, does this house still exist? Is it up there? Do you know which house it is?
We don't even know where it is.
You don't know
No.
where it is?
There's actually the possibility that it's not even in North Guilford.
Oh, okay.
But if anyone knows,
But if anyone knows.
we're looking.
Okay. Well, a question. I don't know if this is something you all know, but how many people are living in North Guilford?
I don't know.
Does anybody know?
I would expect that somebody from the town has
We'd
an
have
idea.
to-
And it depends on what
yeah.
you define as North
Right.
Guilford.
Right.
Right.
A lot of the old timers of North Guilford say that it stops at Route 80.
That's what I've always heard. Is that true?
No, not necessarily. We've definitely got people that are considered North Guilford people living below Route 80. We have information in the book that took place south of Route 80. At one time, there was a borough of North Guilford, and the line on Route 77 was approximately 1,600, which is probably a couple miles below Route 80. So it's not well defined. At one time, there was even a post office in North Guilford. We have postcards with North Guilford postmarks on them. But it's never been a separate town, but it has been a borough and I believe a tax district
Oh,
at
okay.
one time.
Right.
So North Guilford is kind of a nebulous term, but
Yeah.
if you're really from North Guilford, you know it.
You know it. Right.
And you're proud of it.
That's right. I'm sure. I'm sure. So, what are some of your favorite stories? Do you have some favorite stories that came out of this book, or some of the photographs that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I've always lived in North Guilford. I went to my favorite stories and remembrances are of the County Road School, the two-room school on County Road. Melissa Jones was my teacher. Also, Elizabeth Nettleton was my first, second, third grade teacher. Melissa was my fourth, fifth, and sixth grade teacher. And going to the County Road School was a very experience unto itself. Melissa Jones she was everything to us. She was our nurse. She taught us everything, knitting, I can remember to this day she was very specific about speaking correct English. And some of the things that are said today would not be allowed in Melissa Jones's room.
Oh, I'll bet.
Not bad things, but you never put another person's name before yourself. You before someone else's name. You always would. Me and Linda, for example, would not go for her.
Yeah.
No, but we had outside water. We had a pump. That's the only water we had. We had no bathrooms. We had outhouses. We had no playground equipment. 2 seesaws that gave you splinters. But we just made do. You did all the other things, threw balls and played marbles and jacks and made houses out of stones. And the girls made houses. The boys went up on the hill and made tree houses. And I didn't know any difference, so we had a grand old time.
Oh. And how did you get to school?
A school bus.
A school bus.
The first one was a big blue bus with chicken wire on it, on the windows for safety. And then in second grade, they got a little yellow bus. Frank Wetterman drove it for all those years, and so that was a little yellow bus.
Yeah.
And the meals were brought in from Mrs. Lane's home. She would wrap them in towels and blankets and bring them to the school every day to keep them warm.
And Homer Lane, her son, brought them. He was also the janitor. He also started the fire. We had to wash our own dishes. We had a dishwashing brigade. We took turns. She had to heat the water with a big copper kettle down on the stove in the basement.
And that all happened during school hours?
Yes.
What hours did you go to school?
9 to 3.
9 to 3, and you did all of your learning.
We
and
did,
got
yes.
a home-cooked meal brought in.
Right. And did our own dishes.
Locally grown food, home-cooked meal, brought right to you, nice and warm.
Right.
And that's just what we're trying to get back to today, is good
I know.
local food in the schools. And you had it all those years ago.
We did. We did. We didn't have it in the warm weather. I think it started in October. We didn't have it in September, but end of October when it was cold until probably April.
Right.
And then we brought our own sandwiches.
Yeah.
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 But it was a nice hot meal.
That school is 100 years old this year.
Oh. Do you have any pictures of it in the book?
Yes.
there are.
Oh, yes.
So there's
Couple
pictures
of pictures.
The,
Oh, yes.
in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and some stories. Is your story in this book?
Yes. Some of the stories
Some of the
are.
stories are. Oh, that's good.
The oral histories were a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
And we have so many that we put in our archives because only excerpts could fit into the book.
Right.
But you learn so much from these people. And one of the most important thing is that we all should be doing these type of things. We should all be saving our little histories for our families, for how things went, because these people were unbelievable, the things they did. William Russell Dudley, was a teacher out at Berkeley. He was a very smart guy. You've got Baldwin, Abraham Baldwin, who was one of the designers of the Constitution. There's all these things going on in North Guilford that I knew nothing about, and that it's so nice to bring all these things out to people.
Right. Well, how did you decide with all of that you collected? How did you narrow that down and decide what is the focus of this
Time
book
element.
to be?
Very hard.
Yeah.
So what is the time element that you mainly cover in this
1850
book?
to 1960.
That's the main focus.
Main
But
focus,
there
yeah.
there are definitely sections that are way before that.
Yeah.
For example, there's information on the geology of North Guilford, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I saw
And I
that
never
in
knew much about it. And also, of course, the Native American presence in North Guilford before
Right.
we were there, too.
Right.
We also took a few field trips. One of the better ones was over Rockland Road with my pickup. Now, Rockland Road is not passable, but we did it anyway.
That's in North Guilford,
Yeah.
Rockland? I've never heard of that road.
Okay, well, it's named Rockland because they have plenty of rocks. Actually, it's a section of North Madison. It goes from
okay.
North Guilford to North Madison, mostly through water company property. It's pretty rugged. It was in April when we did it. It was a cloudy, kind of cool day. And we were out charging around. We had our photographer, Andy Crampton, with us. And there's an old set of bridge abutments where the road used to be, crossing a small brook. We all jumped across it, and Andy jumped across it, and he didn't quite make it. And he ended up in about 5 feet of water with his camera equipment.
Oh, no.
So it ended up being kind of a cold venture for him. We went to the Peabody Museum and found that we could look at dinosaur tracks that were removed from the tunnel project in North Guilford in the 1920s. I never knew about it until we started the book, but in the basement where nobody goes of the Peabody, they have them all cataloged and in drawers, and
So-
we were able to look at that. We did a few other things. We went to Bell Rock, another thing I'd never heard about. And yeah, we had a good time with a lot of it. There were tense moments too. For example, when Linda encrypted everything. Our computer skills were not great.
No. Yeah.
They've
Mine was
improved
better than
somewhat. They're still primitive, but not great.
Yeah, that was a panic time. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was working on transcribing something. And all of a sudden, everything went blank, and I couldn't get it, and it was saying all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
luckily, I have a son-in-law, Killingworth, and I said, help. Then I emailed Buster and everybody, I've lost the book, I can't find the book.
Oh, my gosh.
I was
Got another
paranoid
computer.
about losing things that I generated, so every time I would write something, I would print out a hard copy. Now, I did it down at the Dudley farm, and the computer and printer down there, and I didn't understand each other.
Oh, okay.
So I was trying to get it to print out something one night down there, and I pushed the button and nothing would happen, and I pushed the button again and nothing happened. Well, eventually it got the message, and apparently every time I had pushed the button, it decided to produce a copy. So it just kept spitting out paper, and I couldn't get it to stop. It wouldn't, you know, it didn't understand the word no. So I ended up with a few copies of that one, and it was a fairly lengthy item too.
Oh.
We also had what we refer to as guest writers, not ghost writers, but guest writers. Joel Helander comes to mind. Nona Bloomer wrote about William Russell Dudley, topics that other people knew more about than we did, and you know, were well versed in producing copy for us.
Yeah, and how many people were actually on the committee? I mean, it wasn't just you three, right?
No.
There were more than that.
About 11 or 12, I think.
Yeah.
Skills
13.
varied. We had people who would not or could not write, but had other skills. We were very fortunate to have Andy Crampton with his photography skills. A lot of eyes, people who proofread the book numerous times. We got most of the bugs out of it, but if you go through, you can still find an occasional minor error.
Right.
Usually a punctuation or something like that, but we did pretty well on that too.
Right.
Joel was really very helpful in directing us to a publisher and just giving us a lot of ideas because he had done this type of thing before too. And he was enthused about the fact that something was being written about North Guilford being part of Guilford. There really isn't a lot on North Guilford.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just, for the sake of getting it straight,
Yes.
there is the Dudley Foundation. How is this book connected with the Dudley Foundation? So tell me about the Dudley Foundation and how that umbrella works for the farm there.
Okay, Buster's better at that.
Okay.
As
Well,
Mr. President.
Oh, the president, of course.
The Dudley Farm's mission is to preserve what it can and to be an educational resource for the community. Came into existence in about 1991. There's been a lot of work done there. We have some pretty good successes. We have a few things that we need to work on, and we're addressing that. But the book was just an offshoot of the Dudley Farm. The Dudley Farm was supportive of it. And actually other organizations and individuals have been supportive too, both financially. We needed a few bucks to get this project off the
Right.
ground.
I'll bet.
The fire company was very helpful. Individual donors were very helpful. And it all made it work.
Good group community effort.
Yes.
Excellent. Let's look at some of the pictures and see what we've got here. We looked at the 4th of July house. We have another one. What does it say?
Okay, that is
Diamond Tires?
That is up, the fellow's name was Winnie Chittenden. That's in the vicinity of 3700 Durham Road in North Guilford. That building is not still there. The building next to it is. Across the street there was an ice house, which is no longer there. You can see something that was common back then. This is probably in the 1920s. There's an orchard over here. A lot of people had small orchards for their own use. A lot of small stores. You could buy gas most anywhere. You didn't know what you were getting. This eventually became a Gulf gas station, but I believe it says mobile gas there. I can't read it that well. They look like old Fords to me. I'm not sure what the cars were, but that was an area that things were sold probably until the 1960s. Winnie did boat rentals. He had soda and candy and stuff like that for sale, which was, you didn't go more than about a half a mile before you ran into a little store selling that type of thing.
Ah. And what, who do we have here?
Okay, we believe that's Mike Schaefer. He was kind of a local character, and he's cutting ice on the pond behind the Dudley farm. Before modern refrigeration, it was necessary to go out and harvest ice every year. discovered that at one point there were 22 ice houses in Guilford, not North Guilford alone, but in Guilford. There were vendors who would go around and sell ice during the summer. The ice was cut in the winter. It had to be a cold, wet job. I've never experienced it, but I can't see how it could have been all that pleasant. You would take the ice and put into an ice house, cover it with sawdust, and it would last well into toward the end of the summer, I understand. So he's got an ice saw there, and he's cutting ice.
Looks like he's posed because he's all dressed up. I don't
Yeah.
think they worked in little berets. And
Now, I understand Winnie Chittenden had a motorcycle that was modified. They took the rear wheel off of it and put a saw blade on there, and they used that to cut ice with.
Oh, wow.
And then a pair of horses also went into the water when they were out there cutting ice. Some winters were better than others. If you
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of ice, it was tough to get enough ice in hand.
For everybody
Yeah.
in town, yeah. And here's another great picture.
That's in the 1920s. That's on Route 77 in the vicinity of Coggin-Chog Court, which is about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile below the Durham line. The Aragoni Construction Company is doing the work. They're working with horses, and they've also got a steam shovel. Route 77 was done in the 1920s. Route 77 was actually done before Route 80. Route 80 was 1934. So the equipment was not what you see today. There was a lot more work involved in getting these projects done.
Right. And then we have,
We have the North Guilford Peaches. There was a float that they put in the Guilford Fair, which they held every year. And some ladies dressed up, we don't know who they are, but they're all dressed up in their finery, and they call themselves the North Guilford Peaches.
oh,
That, we believe, was about 1910.
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
You can probably still recognize some of the houses on the green.
Yep,
Yeah,
you can see the
they're
houses on the
still there.
green
Yeah.
and pulled by oxen, right?
Yeah, and behind it you can see
North Guilford
a
Peaches.
a wagon that says Crystal Ice on it, so somebody was vending ice.
Uh-huh. Great. I wonder if we can actually see these on the camera, or if they're going to be a little too small. Can we get a shot of this one, or is it going to show through the glass? There's going to be a glare on it, I'm afraid.
That's Buster.
oh,
Can you tell us what this is?
Okay, that is Susan Potter, and that is on County Road, diagonally across the street from where the County Road School is, and they are sugaring. Her father, Clarence Potter, was into sugaring. He's using a flat pan there. You can see the steam coming off. Don't see any buckets there, but I can assure you there were some around there somewhere. That was probably in the late 1940s or early 1950s.
And this one that's been in front of me shows
That's
a small road.
That's the bridge over the West River on Route 80, a couple of 100 feet west of Route 77. You can see that roads weren't very good back then, and it looks like it was pretty dry then, but when you get a lot of rain, you just stayed home because it was all mud. You can also see that back in the early 1900s, the trees are very short. In the late 1800s, before oil came in, an awful lot of the wood was cut in North Guilford, turned into charcoal, or just used for heating. And they were really running out of wood, and oil came along just in time to save them. Now, what's going to save us when the oil is depleted?
Right, right, another transition.
But you can see they did have utilities then. You can see the power lines. there.
Yep.
But there's much bigger trees down there now.
What era did you say this was? Did you think about
Early 1900s.
early
Probably,
1900s? Yeah.
The Route 80 was improved in 1934, so it was before that.
So with these kinds of roads back then, it would have been quite a trip to go from North Guilford from your farm to the center of town.
Yeah.
I
True.
would assume, right?
Yes, that's true.
You didn't just bop back and forth.
And quite often with horses.
And with horses as well.
With each book comes a map of North Guilford.
Ah, so here's our map of North Guilford. I don't know if you can see that.
An 1867 version. I'm told it's off by a year, but this is a map of the school districts. We have the Bluff District, which was a school district. There was a North District, which encompassed most of Great Hill Road. The Center District, which is around the churches. South District was just north of Route 80 on Long Hill Road. And each one had its own schoolhouse.
Great. So I'd like to get a close-up of the book itself here. I don't think we've done that yet. Can we get that on close-up? We've got a great picture on the back. Couple little kids in a wagon.
Yes, that's Edwin and Edgar Bartlett, about 1922. Edwin was a selectman in Guilford. They were both involved in the family lumber business. That's up on Great Hill Road near the family homestead, which I believe is number 564. And they're in a pony cart going home or going somewhere or going out to cause mayhem or something.
I bet it didn't take you very long to choose the cover photo.
No.
Because it just says so much. If we can get a close-up of this cover photo.
That's Gertrude Dudley.
Ah,
And
okay.
she was a physical education teacher in the University of Chicago way back in the early 1900s. So she lived on the southwest corner of 80 and 77. And we don't know who the lady is with her, but they're evidently having a great time in her yard.
I think she's one of the Weld sisters.
You think she's a
There's
Weld
sister?
story
Okay.
in there in a picture, so I think that's who it is.
I think you're right.
Well, they are having a great time on this cover, laughing and telling each other stories. And I would really recommend that you get this book and read the stories because it is very interesting and it's really well researched, as I said. The pictures inside are just lovely. And it's our history. So what better reason to go out and get yourself a copy of this book to have at home?
And with each book comes a map, a copy of this map. It's rolled up, it's suitable for framing. The map in itself is pretty interesting. You can see roads that no longer exist, mostly due to the water company advent in the late 1920s. You can see some of the older names of the families that lived in various places. It's kind of a nice map. And you can see that the boundaries of North Guilford are a little bit different than they were. There's actually a corner of North Guilford that was cut off and became part of North Branford because essentially you couldn't get there from North Guilford because of the topography. So they
Made sense.
made some sort of horse deal back then and changed the map a little bit.
Well, where is this book available? Is it in local stores to purchase?
There are several outlets. First of all, you can get it directly from the Dudley Foundation itself, which you would have to call there or show up when somebody's there, 457-0770. Page Hardware, excuse me, Breakwater Books.
Sachem's will be carrying it again pretty soon. They
Oh,
did
good.
work
Yes.
it out.
Country Paint and Hardware in North Branford. I think is
For
that
any
it?
of us.
The farm.
Oh,
The little store in North Guilford.
The little
We love our little store.
the little store in
Yes.
North Guilford.
Right.
I actually carry a few with myself
I do too.
in the car, and I've made
Yep.
sales out in parking lots.
Oh, okay.
Lakeside Feed also.
Lakeside
Bill's
Feed?
telling me, yeah.
Oh, that's great, because
Yeah.
a lot of us go to Lakeside Feed.
Oh, good.
So it is available. Come and get it. And I'm going to let you know the website, which is www.dudleyfarm.com. So go on that website, learn more about it, learn more about the book and where to purchase it. And thank you for watching Spotlight on Guilford. And thank all of you.
Okay, the book
Thank
can
you.
also be accessed through the website.
Oh, okay, good, good, excellent. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job, everyone.